You're listening to Nostalgia Club, the podcast where we look back on our favorite childhood stories and revisit them as adults. At least one of us hasn't read or watched these series, so we also get a first-timer's opinion. Spoiler alert, we will be discussing storylines and future events beyond the first books and episodes. So, proceed with caution.
Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Club. I'm one of the hosts, Victoria, and I'm joined by Michael.
Yes.
And also Jino.
I thought you were going to stop at Michael.
That's
No,
it.
it's just Michael. We also have Jino.
Hello, I'm Jino.
And we are all podcast editors.
And we are all podcast editors. So this is our very first episode. On this show, we're going to be talking about books and TV shows and possibly more like media that we consumed as children and kind of revisiting it as adults now that we are older and possibly wiser.
Possibly. It's the stuff that we used to pretend to be during our recesses in elementary school. Yeah. Things we would argue over on fan forums, make AMVs on YouTube, that kind of stuff. And then you forget about it for 10 years and you go back and go, wow, I was like that?
Yeah.
And you were like that.
Yeah. The inspiration also came from us having conversations about like, oh, did you ever read this as a kid? And then realizing that other people were not completely obsessed with certain series like you were. Like, wow, this wasn't your entire identity as a child? Okay.
Wow, you weren't cool? I was cool.
I read books like Warrior Cats.
Yes, case in point, the topic of today's episode, if the title didn't give it away.
Yes.
Which I didn't know anything about until Victoria brought it up to me. So you, Jino, you and Victoria, both familiar with Warrior Cats, which was apparently just called Warriors for a while?
I think it was Warrior Cats first.
Oh.
The series was Warrior Cats first, and then when they started branching out into other animal groups, they rebranded it Warriors, I believe.
So explain to me the conceit of Warriors or Warrior Cats or whatever this initial series is.
So Warrior Cats is very self-explanatory in a way. It's about a bunch of like wild cats who live in a forest nearby, basically like a human neighborhood. And they like have individual clans. They have their own, what they call a warrior code, which is basically like rules and like an honor code that they live by. It's very organized. They have like a hierarchy of like a leader.
A martial society,
yeah.
if you will.
They have a leader. The leader has a deputy who's like her right hand. And then there's like the warriors who are like the main body of cats who fight and hunt and like take care of the clan. Then there's the queens who are, I can't tell if they're like only the cats who are like actively nursing kittens.
I believe queens is a general term for like cats who are in the stage of their life where they can birth kittens.
Oh, okay.
But queens can also be warriors or other things. It's like an umbrella term.
Gotcha.
They do throw out a lot of terms like real fast and just go like, if you don't know it, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, good luck. So then there's like the group of cats who are nursing kittens. And then there are kits who are kits. And then there's also always a medicine cat who's kind of like not just a healer for the group, but also like a spiritual guide.
The medicine cat carries the clan.
Yeah. The
They would
medicine
all
cat is
be
very
dead
important.
instantly
Yeah.
without their medicine cat.
So yeah, that's kind of like a brief introduction to Warriors if you've never heard of it. But Michael, as our first-time reader, what were your initial thoughts on the first book that we read of the series?
Well, I do want to make a critical distinction. How old were you, Victoria, when you first read Warrior Cats?
I was 11.
11.
Yeah.
You were in like 6th grade, I think you said?
It was 6th grade. All of my friends at the time were into Warrior Cats. And I was like, I like cats. I'll like read this book series. And then so I started reading it, and then there are like so many books. And we'd wait together for like the next series to come out or whatever.
Because it's like, how many did you say? It was like 50 Warrior Cats books or something
each
specifically?
series has 6 books. And I think currently there are 8 series.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're on their 8th.
Yeah, so they're on their 8th. At the time I was reading it, I think it was on the 3rd or 4th series.
There are also about 3 dozen supplementary books.
I
Yes.
have seen, it looks like there's like an elephant one. You've told me there's a dog one.
Well, aside from like the other animal ones, which there are, because there's not just warriors, there's also the dog one, and then there's the one about like bears.
Do you know if those have the same conceit where it's basically martial societies
No,
at
they're
odds?
they're different.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's like the side series that are about other animals, but then there's also within the Warrior Cat series, there are like side companion stories. So for example, one of the characters in the first book, Yellowfang, has her own book that focuses on her story specifically. So if you're reading Warrior Cats and you're like, oh, like Yellowfang's a really interesting character, I want to learn more about her life and like her perspective, there's like a whole book. It's like a thick book that you can read. There's also like manga series that they like adapted of like
Wow.
short side stories later on. But in terms of the other animal books, they're pretty different. Like I read Seekers, which is the one about the bears. That one is about like there's a black bear and a grizzly bear and a polar bear who
The
like,
3 big bear types, yes.
yeah. I can't remember how they all come together, but they somehow join forces and they travel across the world, basically.
Did you say there were 3 bears?
Yeah.
I got curious and I looked it up. There are actually 4 bears.
Oh, there's 4 bears.
One of the bears is a shapeshifter who can turn into any
Oh!
animal.
Oh.
I remember this.
Wow. So that kind of blows this whole thing open then.
This whole universe of animals who have society, they live in a society, and they're also magic, and they get increasingly more magic as the series progresses.
I will say there's some mysticism in OG Warrior Cats.
The initial 2 series of Warriors, like the first 2 series, are much more grounded in terms of like the problems that they face are mainly like, we don't like humans. Humans are like taking over our territory. And the second series...
We also don't like each other.
Yeah.
Each other is taking over our
Yes,
territory.
this is true. In like the second series, it's mainly about the cats having to move away from basically where they've all grown up and find a new home, because like all the clans have to, because the humans have completely like taken over the woods for housing development and whatnot.
The evils.
Yeah,
Of
but
humanity.
then once you get past series 2, it starts getting more into like magic and mysticism. You have like ghost cats, and then cats who can see visions even more than medicine cats can. And then like there's a cat who can like, he like dreams and then like goes back in time to when like the ancient cats lived. It goes very many places.
As you're saying this, like it all tracks for me because there's a lot of lore seeding just in this first book, which is the only one I've read. I will say, Gina, how old were you when you got into Warrior Cats?
I don't remember. I read them as a small child.
Okay. Like elementary school or middle school small?
Like I think elementary school, it was very, very popular, but I was into like other book series more. But I revisited them in high school and I got real into them, but like secretly, because that wasn't cool.
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
I was 28 years old when I first got it, which is to say like half a week ago. I read my first Warrior Cats, and it was great. It reads like high fantasy, except they're kind of aliens because their modes of thinking and of structuring society and culture are very different. And I mean, that's all a cat is once you give it a profound level of sentience and motivation. It's just an alien.
Yeah.
So this was fascinating to me. I mean, I'll read just a little bit of the prologue here, modifying a few words, see if I can do it in real time, just to give you the idea of what I'm talking about when I say this is basically alien high fantasy.
Okay.
Okay. Let me just set the scene.
Why are we all clear our throats?
A half-moon glowed on smooth granite boulders, turning them silver. The silence was broken only by the ripple of water from the swift black river and the whisper of trees in the forest beyond. There was a stirring in the shadows, and from all around, lithe, dark shapes crept stealthily over the rocks. Unsheathed swords glinted in the moonlight. Wary eyes flashed like amber, and then, as if on a silent signal, the creatures leaped at each other, and suddenly the rocks were alive with wrestling, fighting warriors. So I only changed a few words in there. Instead of warriors, it's cats, and instead of swords, it's claws. So that's kind of the vibe.
Yeah. I will say when I first read the prologue again, after so many years, it was like instant wave of memories. I don't know why I remembered this prologue so distinctly compared to any of the other books, but immediately as I read it, I was like, oh, I remember like first reading this. It's a really good hook. Like it really like just puts you right into the drama, the high stakes of warrior cats.
Yeah, there's a lot of, also the names. It takes a lot to, okay, I have a confession to make. I read the prologue of Warrior Cats. I then did some research as to whether or not I could audiobook the rest of Warrior Cats. There is an audiobook that was available. It was like, I don't know. It looked like it would take a long time because the narrator spoke at a very even pace, amicable for listening to a book. And I was like, I gotta go faster than this. And so I just scrolled a little bit down on the YouTube page and I found, for the first book specifically, a Warrior Cats fan dub of the whole book.
Of the whole book?
And it's like a hybrid between an audiobook and like an audio drama.
Ooh, like did they added sound effects and everything?
There's some sound effects, there's a little music as the chapters go on. It's all voice acted. Voice actors coming from different microphone setups, so it's interesting. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of characters in this.
Yeah.
So when you're getting names like, oh, it's Greypaw, Sandpaw, Dustpaw, and Lionheart, and Tigerclaw, and White Storm, and Firepaw, and Blue Star, and Broken Star, and Ragged Star, and Oakheart.
I'm impressed that you remember all of these
and
names.
Redtail.
Yeah, you're just
yeah, you're listing them.
There's a lot. And Yellowtail. and
Smudge.
And Smudge. Okay, so here's the thing about Smudge. When we open our book, our main character, Firepaw, originally known as Rusty, he's a house cat, and he dreams of leaving his domestic life and seeing the wider world and the forest beyond, which he does in like a grand total of 2 chapters. But it's a very fast decision, but it's so artfully done, I must say. If you're like, oh gosh, yeah, we establish our ordinary world for our character and then we leave off. No, they really sell the idea that this cat has to make a decision. And he's stuck between 2 different choices. And when he makes his choice to leave, they give him time between the point where he has decided to leave and actually goes off. And there's just like 2 little paragraphs where it describes him with his friend Smudge, visiting, as they call it, his old haunts and saying goodbye to all these cats. And it gives you this really good sense of finality and moving off into the unknown. And I want to call that out specifically because I just want to clarify, I really like this book. I'm 28 years old, and this book does its thing so freaking well. There's geopolitics between these cat clans. There's the sort of underdog narrative of this house cat that all these wild cats have a prejudice against, sort of rising in their esteem as he learns to be more of a wildcat, even though he's got a spark in him that they can tell he's going to do something great. There's a whole prophecy, and it's really fascinating. And the character of Smudge, this is how you know they know what they're doing, is because they have our original character, his domestic name. Characters change names throughout this thing as they rise in the ranks of tribal self-esteem or whatever.
As they level up.
So our character, who is known throughout most of this book as Firepaw, starts out as Rusty, and his friend is Smudge. And Rusty, our character, is our Luke Skywalker with dreams of going out into the beyond. What we don't get in Star Wars necessarily is someone, for example, similar to Luke Skywalker, who just wants to stay on the moisture farm and is like, the moisture farm's great. I love the moisture farm. I love Tatooine. That's what Smudge is for Rusty. He's the cat who is Rusty's age and goes, I really like just being a house cat. And so it's this nice foil to Rusty's character, and it makes him seem like an exception to the rule. It's nice that we get this dichotomy that feels very well established from the get-go, and it was something I really appreciated. One thing I want to ask the both of you is, does Smudge ever make a reappearance? Because He seems like very utilitarian. It's like, okay, we need to show that Rusty is different than a normal household cat. So we have this other cat character named Smudge here to just be a cat that is happy with his lot in life. Because if he is, then I'll be really impressed. Because normally those characters are just very, they're just to get a point across and then they leave the narrative forever.
What I do know that these books do really well is that any character who is mentioned once, they are going to come back.
Wow.
Like, there are no throwaway characters. They use all of their characters, and they, like, squeeze every, like, drop of story potential out of their characters because there are 8 series of these books, so they have to.
I mean, their cast is so massive.
It's a massive cast, and they go... I remember when we first started talking about this concept, and I said that, like, I grew bored with the series because I thought that in the first series, like, cats die left and right. But I thought
so many deaths in this.
There's a lot of. I was surprised.
Within 2 chapters,
remember
someone's already dead.
It's
how many deaths. But I remember as a kid reading these and being like, these cats are starting to get main character plot armor, and they are no longer. I no longer feel like they're in danger, and the cats aren't dying anymore, and like I don't feel like there's any sort of risk anymore. But going back to it, they die a lot. And trying to, like, re-up my Warrior Cats knowledge and, like, going through plot summaries and stuff, they cycle through characters real fast.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it's their cats, so they're, like, their lives are shorter, or maybe. But, like, they're not that much. Like, a cat can live for 20 years.
There's a lot of fights. There's so much, like, strife between all the clans. There's, like, romantic drama.
Oh, you were telling me about a subplot of, like, 2 cats who had children, 2 cats from 2 different clans who end up having kittens.
Yes,
that happens a few times.
That happens a few times, actually.
That's
it's very
exciting.
Shakespearean.
Yeah.
This whole thing, it's very Shakespearean. So there's a lot of melodrama.
Wow.
Yeah, basically, like, later on in the first series, Graypaw, who becomes Graystripe, falls in love with the river...
Graypaw being our main character, Rusty, who becomes Firepaw. Firepaw's best friend.
Yes.
Firepaw's
best character. Yeah, Graypaw is great. He falls in love with the River Clan cat, and it becomes, like, a source of tension between the 2 best friends because Firepaw is like, dude, you can't do this. This is breaking the warrior code, you know? But, like, Graypaw is like, come on, man. Like, I really like her. And so, like, Firepaw basically has to, like, cover for his friend. And it's, like, a classic, like, secret dating. And then Firepaw has to, like, convince all the other cats in the clan that, like, Graypaw's not doing anything suspicious and that his loyalty is to be trusted.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but just from my experience with this book, I feel like that is probably like one of 5 subplots in the given book.
There's lots.
Yeah, that's just one thing that's happening
gosh.
in the series. And then later on what happens is the clans find out and they're like, you guys have to stop seeing each other. But then the River Clan cat, Silverstream, has already gotten pregnant. But then she actually dies giving birth to the kittens.
We should probably clarify spoilers.
Yes, spoilers. Sorry, Michael.
We'll put a spoiler warning at the
you.
beginning of the episode. I'm okay with spoilers.
Yeah, okay. She dies giving birth, and then there's a lot of tension between River Clan being like, these are technically like our cats, but then Thunder Clan is like, no, they're also our cats, so then their kittens
custody
are caught.
battle.
Yeah, it's caught between
geopolitical
a
custody battle.
And what happens is Graystripe actually ends up going to River Clan for a bit because he like chooses his kids over his clan.
What a good dad.
Yeah.
Best character.
Yeah, he's a great character. He goes through a lot, actually. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
I feel it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I have every ounce of faith that this series goes a lot of places in a single book. I have every ounce of faith that it will go countless more places in just even 9 books, like the first series or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let alone more. I will say, of all the lore that we get, because we get a lot of lore, we get lore that there were lions and tigers in these woods, at least in the history that these cats remember. There were lions and tigers in these woods that these cats believe they are descended from. And so that's influences their naming conventions.
I mean, that's totally possible, too. Like, there were North American lions and tigers.
Do we know if this is North America, though?
I'm assuming...
Or is it a vague Anywheresville?
I think based on the wildlife that we see and also just, like, the vague human cultural touches that we get.
Okay. It is, I will say, it's a very rural sort of setting. And rural is everywhere.
Oh!
The recording engineers
Our
to the
heroes.
rescue. It takes place in England.
Ooh.
I will admit something. You know what it was? So this is one of those books with a map at the front of it. There's
Yeah.
2 maps.
Yeah.
Oh,
actually.
the maps are very good.
Yeah.
Love a book with a map.
It was my mistake when I started this book to begin with the maps because I had no context, and I was like, "There's a lot of names," but there's maps with lovely art, and the houses, for whatever reason, gave me kind of like an English vibe. Also, did you read the dedication at the top of the book?
I did not.
I read it, yeah.
I'll hold on. Let me comb through the appendices of cat names and their allegiances because we got one of those too. So I'll just read this dedication because it's very nice and I feel like it gives a lovely frame for the whole series. For Billy, who left our... Okay, I can't believe just in the dedication I have to explain lore. But the cats call humans 2 legs.
Yes.
All one word. And also StarClan is like the pan... so there's... I can't
Basically
believe...
heaven for cats.
Heaven
is
for
Star
cats.
Clan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like heaven for cats, but it's like they can come back
They
and
can,
mess
like,
with stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
the Force.
eventually.
There's 4 primary clans. I'll just say because we haven't said this. Thunder Clan, that's the clan that we spend most of our time with, at least in this book. Protagonist clan.
Named after a road.
Yes,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
right.
A
That is
human
lore,
road.
which is great. Again, great lore. Why is it called Thunder Clan? Is it just because it sounds cool? No, because the road, the highway or through street or whatever going through this forest is called what? The Thunder Path?
Mhm.
Yep.
Because cars are driving along it and they're super loud.
Yeah.
So they call it the Thunder Path, and that's where Thunder Clan gets its name because it
cool.
most borders the road.
Very
Mhm.
cool.
Another clan, River Clan, self-explanatory, does a
They're
lot
near
of stuff
river.
at the river.
They swim and fish.
Swim and fish. Wind Clan, which we don't even ever see in this
Not
book.
yet. Yeah.
Not yet. They occupy kind of like a cliffy.
They're like a
step-
moorish area, like
okay.
tall grass, more open land. The idea of Wind Clan is they're like really fast runners because they have to catch a lot of like rabbits and like faster moving prey.
As opposed to River Clan that swims real well.
Yeah.
And Thunder Clan, which is very good for prowling through the trees
Mhm.
and stalking prey.
Yeah.
And then there's Slytherin.
Shadow Clan, which just the name, and they get that name because they live in the shadowy corners of the forest. Oh no, Shadow Clan.
They're suspicious.
Suspicious.
How can one side of the forest be more shadowy than the other?
It's probably the least justified of all the names. It's just like we got to clarify that. I mean, I almost feel like because you would think like their rationale for that was we got to clarify that this clan is is the bad clan, Shadow Clan. But with all of with all the work that they do in building up this world, I don't think they needed it. They could have given it any clan name, and they have enough opportunities to show Shadow Clan acting antagonistically.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Especially with what happens with Shadow Clan in this book, which I can't believe we have a whole... Oh my gosh, I was going to talk about the dedication. I'm going to read the dedication before we continue because there's too much left to talk about. Okay, so this reads, For Billy, who left our 2-leg home to become a warrior. We still miss him very much. And for Benjamin, his brother, who is with him now in StarClan.
Mm.
And then special thanks to Kate Carey. So I can only speculate, but it seems like it's 2 people whose cat ran away, and they just sort of manifested the idea of this narrative that this cat went off and sort of joined a society of cats living free in the woods, which is just a beautiful kind of silver lining to spawn a whole book series.
That is really nice. I interpreted it as like someone's son became a soldier.
Oh wow.
Oh my gosh.
I just took it to mean the cat ran away from home.
Oh,
Wow.
I thought, oh, these are 2 humans and they went to war and died.
Oh.
And then someone was like, warrior cats.
Well,
I guess we'll never know. We had to
part
ask
of me
the
wouldn't
author.
even put it past it because look, this book is violent in its own right. These cats, it is a warrior caste system.
Mm-hmm.
Their whole identity and world is wrapped up in constant violent conflict, constant readiness. From the moment they are born, they are indoctrinated into a system of constantly needing to be ready at all times, patrolling territory. There is a whole system that exists between these clans where they can act amicably toward each other while also recognizing the fact that they are perpetual enemies and have no plans to ameliorate that ever. It's high fantasy, but they're aliens because they think and act differently than we do in a way. I will say one thing that really interested me among the lore that we get is we get neutering lore within the first 3 chapters.
Oh, yeah. They're like, these are cats. They're naked. They pee all the time. We're going to dive into that.
Yeah, when they're patrolling their territories, it'll just casually mention like, oh, and he left his scent, at the edge of their territory. They're peeing. They're just peeing.
There's a bit in this book where one of the cats is like, I've pooped. Throw it away. And the cat's like, all right, that's part of my job.
That's true. They call it dirt. You must clean her dirt.
Yeah.
Which it's a great euphemistic term. But it's one of those things, again, where it's high fantasy aliens because for them it's normal. But when you think about it for us, it almost sounds like a South Park episode or something because you'll have these renowned warriors, Lionheart and Tiger Claw, leading the apprentices, that's the actual name for Firepaw and Greypaw and the others, leading them around. We haven't even mentioned Ravenpaw, which is a whole nother subplot.
Yeah, there's a whole thing.
Like leading them around the borders of ThunderClan territory and saying things like, Lionheart, who's great.
I would
Rip.
say you are definitely like the Lionheart of this group. I just get like Lionheart vibes. I think maybe it's partially the hair.
I do have, a listener wouldn't know, but I have very, very long red hair.
Yes. A luscious mane.
A luscious mane.
Like a lion. Thus Lionheart.
So, yeah, Lionheart will be like, listen well, young apprentices. You must always be ready at the borders of RiverClan for any violence to outbreak. And then he just takes a piss. And then Tiger Claw, who's kind of like our like a more aggressive Snape. Tiger Claw is making moves within ThunderClan.
Oh, yeah.
As a primary antagonistic character. But it's not too overt. Again, geopolitics. There's things happening on the outside of ThunderClan and on the inside. It's wonderful. But Tiger Claw's, similarly on that same track going, Ravenpaw, you worthless little scum. Stop being such a worthless creature. You'll never make a strong warrior. And then he takes a piss on a bush. So it's like... It's wild when you think about it, but you just have to embrace it. They go to this thing. What's the rock that they go to?
The Moonstone.
Moonstone.
Did you catch where that actually is?
What?
What the cave actually is that they're actually going into?
I don't.
That they don't understand?
No.
It's an abandoned mine.
Is it?
That whole thing is man-made.
Oh.
Their religion, their very real, tangible religion that affects them physically,
it does.
Is man-made.
Okay, so this is where StarClan comes into the picture. So StarClan, Heaven for Cats, where warriors go when they die. It's ghost cats who live in space, in a way.
But also in your hearts and minds.
I guess. I've only read one book.
With like how the series progresses into like more and more like magic. At the beginning of the series, StarClan is very much almost like a concept. Only the leaders and the medicine cats have a connection with StarClan.
And Firepaw.
Because he's special.
Because he's the hero.
He's the prophesized hero of
Only
ThunderClan.
fire will save ThunderClan.
Yeah. So
only fire. Here's a new cat. You're fire now.
Maybe this will work.
Save the clan. Hey, fire. Hey, you're fire now. Save the clan.
Blue Star just like really jumped on it. She was like, you, cat who looks like fire. You must be the prophesized one.
By the way, Blue Star's the leader of ThunderClan and is like, to make more, I don't know, Harry Potter references, is like if, what's her name? McGonagall? It's like if McGonagall was also Dumbledore.
Ooh, yeah.
But also like a badass. like really awesome. Just really cool, at least in this book. Again, these books go places I couldn't put anything past the progression of this plot, and just from the look on Victoria and Jino's face, I can see that things change.
Blue Star, I know we're going to talk about StarClan, but Blue Star's character arc, she does not stay the like stable wise mentor.
Yeah.
Like you see the toll of leadership on her, It's actually like a really good example of like the toll that trying to be a good leader takes on a person. What becomes of her? She loses all of her close friends. She's betrayed multiple times. She stopped trusting her own clan. She gets super paranoid and like stops functioning as a leader. And then at the end has a resurgence of like, I need to help my clan, and like sacrifices herself to like save Firestar's, or he becomes
Fireheart.
Fireheart's life.
Spoiler alert,
It's a great-
Firepaw becomes the leader after Blue Star.
If
Well,
you didn't guess.
I feel like once you find out that all leaders get the name Star added to
Yeah.
the end of their name, you're like, Firestar is going to happen.
Yeah,
There's
Firestar
no way
is
it's
an
not.
awesome name.
It's an awesome name.
Some of the names, like, I think in a couple series later, there's one called like Squirrel Flight. Squirrel Star. That's a good one. I like that one, actually. No, I take it back. Squirrel Star is good.
I feel like anything sounds good when you add star to it.
Yeah, I'm thinking of all like the different like cat prefixes
Yeah.
to the names.
Even like Dust
Even-
Star.
Even Running Nose, Running Star.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
There's a cat named Running
It's
Nose.
great.
That's good. That's a
Yeah.
good one. But StarClan.
Yeah, so StarClan is like initially at the beginning of the series, they're not as involved. Like they just like kind of look on from afar and like observe the clans. But later on, like some StarClan cats almost become like the Jedi, where they can just like appear.
Force Ghost.
Force ghosts, yeah. They mainly still like appear in dreams, but then later on in the series, because then they find out there's like where do like dishonorable cats go when they die? They don't get to go to StarClan. They
Oh.
actually go to like what's called the Dark Forest.
Oh.
They're called Dark Forest cats.
Cat
Oh.
Hell.
Yeah. And they're like basically like intended to be like isolated. They're not like around other Dark Forest cats. They're not all like together and like conniving.
Oh.
They're intended to be like, you broke the warrior code, so you are sentenced to eternal like solitude and loneliness.
Eternal bad vibes.
Yeah. But then what happens is later on, like these Dark Force cats learn how to become like ghost cats and like be seen by alive warriors. Then they have like a whole like arc where they actually fight the Dark Force cats. Even though they're ghosts, they can like physically fight them.
At this point, I'm just thinking of like Dune. Like, there's a whole thing in like, I don't know, third or fourth book of Dune that involves genetic memory and stuff like this. And this is all just sounding like a more mystical version of that. And just
Less worms, more cats.
less worms, more cats.
Yeah. You think like there are cats who like have died, but they always like come back at some point. Whether it's like if they're in StarClan, they'll like come back later to like give some wisdom to like the leaders. Or if they were bad cats, they'll come back and like cause more trouble. Basically like enact their revenge that they weren't able to get in life.
Goodness.
Yeah, so it gets very intense. And then in terms of Blue Star, she loses her faith in StarClan, right?
I think so. I know there's a subplot in the first series where we meet some cats who are atheists who don't believe in StarClan.
There are atheist cats.
There are
Wow.
atheist cats, which is super fun. And I love the idea of an atheist in a setting where there is like literal proof of the god. Like they show up and they're like, hello. And the atheist is like, I do not see. So
They're like,
trick of the
definitely
light.
did not get a prophecy from StarClan. They don't exist.
like StarClan's literally like poking you in the back and you're like, it's a big bug. I do not see. But
Doesn't like Hollyleaf in the third or fourth series, like she doesn't believe in StarClan?
Possibly.
I suppose if for most cats there is no interfacing with it, at least until I guess these later books
Yeah,
where
well, Hollyleaf is a cat in like a later book, and at that point, like there's just like constant like StarClan interactions.
Hollyleaf is one of the cats who believe they are a part of a prophecy. So I'm guessing, I remember reading this series, but again, it was so long ago. So I'm just spark noting it. But Hollyleaf believes she's part of a prophecy. So by that interpretation, she must believe in StarClan.
Well, but what happens is she realizes she's not part of the prophecy, and
Loses
she kind of
faith?
like, yeah, she loses faith. She like turns. I guess it's not like technically like atheism if like you still believe they exist, but she like drops out of the faith.
heresy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Maybe.
Yeah, the religious politics in this series is also really interesting.
Wow.
They really go like every possible way, like relationship conflict,
Generational trauma.
generational trauma.
Is Tiger Claw reincarnated at some point?
No. But he has
Tiger Claw being the ambitious, conniving
Yes.
Member of StarClan who...
Well, of ThunderClan.
Of ThunderClan, jeez. Who orchestrates, essentially, quite interestingly, a series of deaths to place himself at higher positions of power and also disenable individuals who could conceivably undermine that power, even if it doesn't necessarily mean ending their life himself. And makes an enemy of our hero, Firepaw, who by the end of the book becomes Fireheart.
Yes. Tiger Claw is basically one of the primary antagonists of the first series in particular, but he does come back as a antagonist in other series as well.
He's kind of like the Vader, or like his influence, like even though he dies, his influence just like keeps going.
The Dio Brando for those who have watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yeah, so he basically he has some kids, and those kids, some of them kind of end up following in his footsteps because they're like, oh, my dad was this great ambitious warrior. And he also when he starts to be able to actively manipulate them, that also leads to them becoming, I guess, bad cats in their own way. But then in particular, he has one child named Brambleclaw who grows up basically wanting to get out of his father's shadow. But he looks a lot like Tiger Claw. And that's a reason why a lot of cats mistrust him or don't want to get as close to him because he looks exactly like his dad. Whereas other siblings don't look as much like him. Him in particular, his story follows him trying to get out of his father's shadow, basically create his own name and try to live honorably since his father did not. So his arc is also super interesting.
He gets there too.
Yeah.
He gets the star title.
He eventually becomes the leader of ThunderClan.
Wow.
This
what series number is that?
This is when I stopped reading.
7.
So
okay.
I read up until the point where Brambleclaw becomes Bramblestar.
Okay.
But then after that, the series afterwards takes a complete jump. I was excited to learn more about Bramblestar and what he does as a leader. But after that, they took a break from the main, I guess, present situation, and they started doing a series about some of the older ancient cats. So after that, I was not as interested in that history, and I was I just want to learn about Bramblestar.
You were caught up in the current narrative thrust.
Because it when he becomes leader, it's so much is happening still. But I think what actually happened, because I was trying to figure out what series 8 is about. I think what happened is the reason why they went back in time is because they're trying to set up things for
the finale, the big old.
Well, I don't know if there's ever gonna be a finale, but setting things up for Bramblestar's, the new series where he is the leader and the things that happen in that series.
Okay, that makes sense. There's narratives that I know of that do that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it is rough, especially if you've gone through so many series.
Yeah. And at that point, I was a bit older and I was kind of these aren't as appealing to me anymore. Again, it went into a lot of magic and less grounded. I don't know, maybe if I reread it now, I would be more into it, but we'll see.
I believe series 8 still coming out, not done yet.
Oh,
they're
the one with the going back to the past to explore the origins?
No, I think at the end of series 6, it should be, is when he becomes leader. Hello, it's Victoria here. Just wanted to jump in and say that we actually got the series order a little bit mixed up. It's actually series 4 at the end when Brambleclaw becomes Bramblestar, and then series 5 is when it jumps back to the past and talks about the ancient cats in Dawn of the Clans. Then in series 6, it jumps back to the present, but it doesn't quite focus on Bramblestar until series 7.
And then
series 8 is now we're going back to the present.
The continued narrative.
Which is why I was I honestly would probably want to try and pick up series 8 again, but at this point I don't remember so much that's happened that I would have to reread the whole thing.
Well, if anyone can tell just from listening to us for these last 45 minutes or whatever, that's a lot happens in a very short amount of time. We haven't even talked about Yellowfang.
What I realized is because when I was telling you about this series, I was telling you this happens in the second series. I realized that happens in the first series.
But the second book, I don't know.
No, like it happens like later on in the series, but like it just like felt so much longer when I read it as a kid. When I'm recalling it, I'm like, oh, that happened like way after. But like it actually happens like in the first 6 books. All the stuff with like Gray Stripe and like his like forbidden romance, and then like with Blue Star's whole entire arc like happens within the first like 3 or 4 books. Then they face like an attack from these dogs, and then there's like the whole Scourge thing, which is like, and then like Tiger Claws. Like so much happens in 6 books. The books actually, like, they're not that long, but, like, they're really efficient with their time.
They're well-paced. They know exactly what they need to say and they say it.
Yeah.
I will say, if there's one thing that threw me for a loop, which you'd think something would have at this point, well, I suppose sharing tongues is a custom that we didn't discuss. That
was the funniest name
It's
to
the
me.
funniest name. It's basically cats, grooming themselves, licking their pelts, licking each other's pelts.
Yeah.
And it's described as like a thing they do at the beginning of the day. It makes me think of a totally different animal. It makes me think of like chimps and gorillas, like picking bugs off each other, and it's socializing. It's what they do. They lick themselves, they lick each other, they talk about the events of the day. But also, when one of them dies, part of like the essential like custom of laying them to rest involves sharing tongues one last time. So they clean the wounds of the dead cat by licking it, just all of them together. And then some of them like spend the night lying beside the dead cat's body, which is a lot of careful thought put into a funerary custom in a book that honestly is a lot of death. I will clarify for anyone listening who, I don't know, might be a parent or something and is like, well, I don't know if I want to give my kids this book where all these cats are killing and dying, murdering each other left and right. There isn't like any gore or anything like that. There's not blood. It will mention, maybe it mentions blood a couple times. At least in this first book, Victoria's giving me a look like, you don't know the half of it.
I don't know. There's just one. It's true that like the violence, it's not described in like super specific detail. It's not like, oh, the cats did all these like crazy violent things to each other. It's
and you
just,
could
like,
see the bone.
Yeah. But it's mainly just like, oh, they like bit each other or like scratched or whatnot. But there are like specific, I guess, but then again, I'm like remembering it, so I don't actually know like how it is written. I just remember like looking back and being like, I read that as a kid.
The theater of the mind.
Yeah. But there are like some pretty like violent things that happen to these cats. So, but the book series is intended for ages 8 and up. So,
I mean, look, when we were kids, we read stuff that involved characters dying left and right. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
It's surprising the amount of things that you can tolerate when you're a kid reading about like storylines with violence.
Yeah. I think it's like a little bit more tame because it's like they're cats. They're not like humans. When I was a kid, I really didn't think anything of it. I was just like, yep, there sure are a lot of cats that die. I was also really attached to like these characters. I still am.
They're good characters.
They're good characters. Rereading it was just like waves of memories, remembering like all the storylines, and like they all have like some of them deeply tragic backstories that like even like Blue Star, like we get into her backstory later on in the story.
Does she get like Yellowfang? Does she get a spin-off series to herself?
She does. She has her own like spin-off, and it's more about like her journey to becoming a leader. Because
when we begin this book, even in just like the prologue, it specifically says, even though she is somewhat of an older cat, she's kind of freshly a leader. There was like some event in this book where it was like the first event of her reign or whatever. Regardless, she's very well respected.
Yeah.
And she's got a good head on her shoulders. There's a lot of, oh my gosh, ThunderClan's in a bad way when we enter this book.
Yeah.
ThunderClan's having a bad time.
And they will continue having a bad time for 8 series.
ThunderClan kind of falls prey to the machinations of Tiger Claw and the way he's trying to rip up the social fabric to bring himself power. Blue Star is like carefully managing the attitudes of her own people. So here's the thing about Yellowfang, because we got to get into Yellowfang real quick. I don't want to linger on it. Yellowfang is the medicine cat of Shadow Clan.
Or was.
And
then she was kicked out.
Kicked out for reasons that we're not sure of in this first book for a little while. And Firepaw encounters her, defeats her in single combat, and doesn't kill her, shows mercy because he wasn't necessarily raised in the strict warrior society. He's got a little bit of that softness to him. He cares, which is why he gets named Fireheart, I think. and they bring Yellowfang back to ThunderClan, where most of the cats don't really like Yellowfang, but Blue Star is like, the way that Blue Star manages her population and just like very carefully walks the line of like, you will all get what you want, but also I'm not going to make a bonehead political move just to satisfy you. And like by the end of this book starts like, because she takes Firepaw unto herself as a mentee. She starts mentoring Firepaw, partially because there's a prophecy that might be about him, so she wants to kind of keep him close and sort of train him up, but also because Firepaw, by the end of this book, kind of becomes her, like, hand with which she can take covert maneuvers without giving herself away. Yeah. Like a certain plausible deniability. And the fact that we get that within the first book, and that is like one fraction of a fraction of one of the many subplots, and it's just done so well.
What I love about like the first book is you spend part of the book thinking like, man, Tiger Claw has really got Blue Star in his pocket. Like, she totally trusts him. She made him her deputy even after like all these things happened. Like, he's really done a good job of winning her trust. But then a few chapters later, you realize Blue Star isn't as in the dark as you think she is. She doesn't fully trust Tiger Claw, even though, like, he is her deputy, and she does, like, trust him in a lot of matters. But even so, she understands that, like, he has ambition that can get out of hand. So she's like very like careful with how she like plays the field even within her own clan.
It's wonderful. If there's one thing that just didn't make any sense to me at all, it was near the very end of the book where we're in our climactic moment, our climactic battle. I think this is a good time to mention that the initial ThunderClan medicine cat, Spotted Leaf, who's great and has this tie to the mystical. We don't get a lot of her, but what we do get of her is great because she doesn't take it from anyone.
Yeah. The medicine cats are always like one of the most interesting characters, regardless of who it is.
But Spotted Leaf is removed from the narrative, let's say, violently and off screen.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a really rough thing because the only two people that know about the prophecy are Blue Star and Spotted Leaf. Spotted Leaf was the one who actually got the prophecy, the one that StarClan spoke to. And she ends up having a moment where she specifically tells Firepaw the prophecy, and Firepaw doesn't seem to make the connection.
He's just like, what?
He's like, what do you mean fire will save ThunderClan? Fire is like really dangerous. Yeah. And Spotted Leaf's like, get out of here, man.
All right, Firepaw.
Yeah.
All right, just think about fire. Get out of here.
Yeah. But Spotted Leaf is, I mean, we've done spoilers. Spotted Leaf is killed off screen.
She's assassinated.
Well, I don't know if it was distinctly an assassination or if she was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because here's the big blow up. ShadowClan, oh my gosh, had undergone an extreme change of management.
Real quick. And its new leader, Broken Star, which, well, that's great, has utterly ruined the social fabric of his own clan to try and like reset said social fabric by creating a legion of essentially child soldiers, kittens, that are loyal only to him, and he ousts the other ShadowClan warriors to the fringes. Well, it's mainly he ousts like the elders. So anyone who's like sick or elderly, usually like you see in ThunderClan, like they really respect their elders. Even though Yellowfang is like an outsider, like Blue Star is like very insistent that Firepaw respects her because she's a senior warrior. She has more life experience than you. Despite the fact that she's from another clan, she deserves respect. Whereas in ShadowClan, what's happened is Broken Star takes over and then he like, if they're not useful fighters, he doesn't care about them.
It's also, he's removing the people who would remember what it was like before.
Yes.
This is true.
This is the big brain stuff. This is why I like this book so much.
Yeah.
Because all these little details, they all make sense. The one thing that doesn't make sense, and I've been beating around the bush, when our characters, so here's the thing, ShadowClan warrior named Clawface sneaks into ThunderClan camp, kills Spotted Leaf, wonderful Spotted Leaf.
And then steals 2 kittens.
Was it 2 or 3?
2.
Okay, steals 2 kittens. Because this is something that ShadowClan has been doing that they seed even earlier in the book. This doesn't come out of nowhere. That ShadowClan not only using its own kittens for this purpose, has been stealing kittens from other clans. And even with Wind Clan, pushed them out of their territory, presumably stole their kits, or a fair amount of them as well, to bolster its own ranks under the corrupt and despotic leadership of Broken Star. And so when Blue Star gives Firepaw essentially leeway to go in there and go after, because there's this thing where it's like, did Yellowfang have any role in this? Yellowfang sort of brooks a truce between some of the ousted Shadow Clan elders and warriors, and this sort of like strike team of that ThunderClan sends in to get these kits back. And they go into the Shadow Clan camp like, all right, we're in it now. Like we were out here looking maybe for Yellowfang to get our kits back, but now we've uncovered the political machinations of Shadow Clan and what's really going on. We're going to go in there, we're going to get our kits, and if necessary, and it seems like we're going to have to, because now we're in league with these Shadow Clan outsiders, we are going to depose Broken Star and reestablish Shadow Clan as it was to put things back in order. And in the midst of this conflict, in the midst of this violent conflagration, this like CIA strike, essentially, to oust an unfavorable leader and place one back in that's a little more amicable to everyone else, Firepaw gets his hands on Clawface. Clawface, who specifically abducted the kids, who killed Spotted Leaf. It could have been Hopwood. Spotted Leaf, it seemed like, was fighting back, but just for the sake of it, I'll say cold blood. He murdered her.
I think it was described as like a single paw stroke to the back.
Was it? Oh.
Or like a warrior strike to the back.
She did fight back a little bit because it says like when they're suspecting Yellowfang, they're like Spotted Leaf doesn't have like gray fur under her claws, so it means she was fighting another cat.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, it was like medicine cats are not like, they're trained warriors, they can fight, but they're not as in practice. Yeah, they're not as in practice as like a full-fledged Shadow Clan warrior who trains every day.
So here's the thing: we're in the middle of this battle. All heck's breaking loose, right? The stakes are as high as they have ever been. You're in enemy territory. For your Firepaw, you're in enemy territory. You are engaging in this deposing action of the enemy leader to reinstate a new government within Shadow Clan, essentially, to get these kits back. You have found the individual who murdered Spotted Leaf. Firepaw really takes a moment when he's like, I can't believe Spotted Leaf is gone.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because it happened so fast.
It happened so fast. She dies off screen.
Mm-hmm.
You have Clawface within your grasp. And he's about to do something real rough. He's about to kill Clawface, which cats have been dying left and right. Cats have been killing each other left and right. Everything that all of these warriors have been telling their other cats is you got to be prepared to fight and die for your clan.
Mm-hmm.
Whitestorm, who is a warrior of ThunderClan.
I think it's Whitetail.
I think it's Whitestorm because I heard Whitestorm and I was like, whoa, Whitestorm.
Whitestorm, yeah.
Whitestorm, who kind of leads the You're all looking it up. I can hear
Whitestorm. It's Whitestorm.
Whitestorm.
Okay, I don't know why. I don't.
It's fine. You've got like a
There's so many
bajillion
cats.
books of lore in your head. I've got one.
It gets equally confusing when like some of them start like repeating like we have like so many like ash paws. Like,
yeah, we get 2 tiger stars.
Yeah.
Wow. So anyway, Whitestorm stops Firepaw from killing Clawface, and says, no, excuse you. ThunderClan doesn't kill other cats unless we absolutely have to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're telling me this now?
It does come out of nowhere. It does really come out of nowhere. And it seems like a last-ditch attempt to be like, ThunderClan are the good guys.
Yeah.
Shadow Clan are the bad guys.
And
the
I'm
good
like,
guys don't kill. After all this death, we're doing this now.
It was just a lot for me that was the one thing that made me go, hold on a second.
Yeah.
This doesn't quite track for me. I mean, I understood perhaps why they do it, because you don't necessarily want Firepaw, your main hero, who's still kind of like a young teenager, young adult.
He's an apprentice, so he's like, well, at this point, because it passes a few months, so he's like 8-9 months old.
Which in human years
is an age.
It's like a teenager, yeah.
Like, I can understand why you wouldn't want to have Firepaw commit murder.
Yeah.
At this
but it's also
age.
Like, he killed Spotted Leaf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the very least, you could have Whitestorm be like, no, Firepaw, you're still an apprentice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I don't know. It just threw me for a loop.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if anything, even if you had like this ethic for your clan, which I will say they do maintain their codes and their ethics to the point of self-destruction sometimes. But you'd think after all that they've been through, like there's an earlier battle in the book where ShadowClan straight up invades ThunderClan's camp. Lionheart dies, also off screen.
There's a section where one of the lieutenants of ShadowClan is described as entering the camp, kills an elder. Just like one sentence, just kills the elder, and then like goes into the kit hut, the kit den.
Yeah, it's not even just murder. It's like they're actively trying to steal babies to bolster their child soldier army.
Yeah,
it's like you'd think if anything warranted like the exception to the rule, because he specifically says we don't kill unless we have to.
Well, actually, in this fight, like they mainly like they fight to like injure. They try not to like fully like kill cats. I don't know.
It's
but it
admirable.
definitely should have been established earlier and not at like this pinnacle moment where like it should have been.
By the way.
It probably would have been better if like it was like Firepaw remembering like, oh wait, our code is like we try not to kill.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Being caught in the heat of the moment and then pulling back.
Whereas it's like this random like other warriors like, by the way, we shouldn't do this.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What you doing there?
It's interesting too because that plot point becomes very important in the second book. So it's weird that it's introduced so late in the first book because Firepaw finally, or at this point, Fireheart comes clean to Bluestar and says, hey, your deputy killed one of the previous deputies. And Bluestar doesn't believe him because of that thing. Our deputies don't murder. Our clan doesn't murder. And like, if she was to believe that, then that would be dishonoring the name of Redtail.
Wow.
Because
Tiger Claw?
So the idea is that Oakheart killed Redtail, and then Tiger Claw killed Oakheart is the story that Tiger Claw has put out. Like, I killed Oakheart in revenge.
Gotcha.
But in reality, Redtail just killed Oakheart outright, and then walked over to Tiger Claw and said, battle's over, and Tiger Claw said, great, and then killed Redtail.
Yeah.
So the idea that if Tiger Claw's story is a lie, that means Redtail just murdered Oakheart, which would dishonor Redtail.
Oh.
This is again this is galaxy brain like world building stuff.
So
like it's not just the this is beautiful. Like the obvious solution. The obvious solution to that plot point is Fireheart tells Bluestar Tiger Claw did something bad, and Bluestar goes, I don't believe you because I can't believe that Tiger Claw would do something so terrible. But no, they take it a step farther and they say, I can't believe that because it would mean that Redtail, who I trust more than Fireclaw, did this terrible thing. So that's why I can't believe the story, in addition to the fact that losing Tiger Claw could potentially be a significant issue and there's maybe ways to redirect his violence. But like that's great. I love it. All these intersecting threads of culture and geopolitical machination. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing me Warrior Cats.
This has been episode 1 of our Warrior Cats pod.
Yeah. Well, on that note, that's all we have for today. But as you can tell, there's so much more that we can talk about.
I do have one more question for the both of you.
Sure, yeah.
Since you discovered Warrior Cats at a much tenderer age than I, did you ever have a Warrior Cats OC?
Hey, Victoria
immediately flinches.
Hey, Victoria, you ever had a Warrior Cats OC?
Victoria, you ever had
I'll go with mine first because mine's much shorter.
By the way, for those of you who don't know, OC stands for Original Character. It's as if you created a character existing in a universe. For example, if you were a fan of Star Wars, maybe you created a Jedi OC that was either a character you thought was interesting or was just you as a Jedi. So Warrior Cats OC, hit me with them.
Warrior Cat, first of all, the fan base Warrior Cats is so strong. It helps to have a series that became popular when the internet was also becoming popular and then continued to pump out good content the entire time. And so you have like generation after generation after generation of kids who are all in this fandom.
Like there are definitely parents now who like grew up reading Warrior Cats and they're like, look, my child, you can now read Warrior Cats.
Yeah. So like there are entire like animated AMVs, like long, fully animated like fan material of this series on YouTube.
Wow.
And when I was reading it for the first time, there was a not insignificant part of my class who would role play Warrior Cats on the playground. They would one of the kids was like the mom queen cat or whatever, or like the star, and she would like order her warriors around and like they would fight each other and pretend to be cats and hiss at each other. I was the cool kid. I pretended to be a Pokemon, so I was different.
What Pokemon were you?
I just the biggest one.
Cool.
This is not relevant at all,
Dragonite.
but we were like, what if Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard combined into one Pokemon? That's the one I want to be. So that was
That's
cool.
great.
Charvistoise.
Toys.
But Victoria,
Yes.
So what my friends would do is we weren't that cool where we would like role play as warrior cats, but we like at my school we had like the option to either basically have recess outside, like go outside and like play on the playground or like play kickball or whatever. Or you could go to the library for your recess.
like the cool kids
Like
did.
the cool kids get that math homework done so you
Yeah.
can play Pokemon at home.
Because I transferred to the school like in the middle of the year, and so like I would like make friends, but then like not have quite gotten to the point where I knew what everyone did for recess. So I would always be like, where is everyone at recess? Like all these like classmates that I've been talking to throughout the day, they're like not out here. And then I realized they were at the library talking about warrior cats. One of my friends like made a website that was like a warrior cats like blog. This was like back in like the blogger days where you could like customize the website. They all had like warrior cats OCs. Like they would like find like a reference picture of what they wanted the cat to look like, and then they write like bios and stuff. And so then I was like, I want to create a warrior cats OC. So my warrior cat OC was named Leaf Storm.
Ooh, wow.
That's a Pokemon move.
It was because I really liked Leaf Pool. And then like one other cat. Oh, and Sandstorm. I really like Sandstorm and Leaf Pool, who are sisters.
So you combined
No,
them.
they're not sisters. No,
It's
Leaf Pool.
Jino's Pokemon combination.
They're not sisters. Sorry. Leaf Pool and Squirrel Flight are sisters, but Sandstorm is the mom.
Okay.
And so I really liked like.
By the way, Sandstorm is like a kid in this first book. So
Yeah.
keep him, again, generational.
Yeah. So I combined like Leaf Pool and Sandstorm and got Leaf Storm, which is. Anyways,
That's
so
cool. All right.
all the fun childhood memories.
I just wanted to. I was
It's
just
a very
curious.
important question. Yeah, I feel like we like didn't even like.
There's so much. We'll have to do more.
We'll do
Warrior
this
Cats.
again.
We'll do more Warrior Cats episodes.
We'll do this again.
But next week we'll be back with another childhood memory to parse through
explore.
and revisit. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. And
Do we want to explain this to Casey?
Our boss, Casey
So-
Wayland, creator of We're Alive, a
Yes.
story of survival.
A hallowed name in the podcasting audio drama community.
so one thing we were thinking that would be fun at the end of our episodes, the person who is the first time reader, so in this case, Michael,
Me.
has to try and summarize Warrior Cats to our boss who has never heard of Warrior Cats, truly never, doesn't even know what it is, in 60 seconds. So good luck, Michael. That will play probably after like the credits or something.
The very lengthy and descriptive credits.
Yes,
that we
after
have.
all the announcements.
And now a word from our sponsors.
No, we're,
So now, as our ending segment, we are going to call our boss. Well, Michael is because he's the first time
I'm the
reader.
first time reader. And this is, like, let's be clear. Episode 1, this is a tall order. Like, not only episode 1, so there is no established meta for how
Yeah.
to do this, but it's Warrior Cats, which if you've
There's a
listened to
lot.
all of this,
Just do your best.
all the names, I don't, like, I can list them all, but on demand? Like, individuals on demand?
Are we doing like the entire series or just the first book? or-
Let's just try and explain like the first.
It's got it. I don't have any
Even- yeah,
context for the rest of the
Just
series.
try to explain the first book.
Okay, let me call.
Or are we just gonna call him right now?
I'm just gonna call him right now.
Is he at the office?
I think he's at the office.
He's here. He's
He's
here right
here.
now. We can
Too
just
late,
drag
I'm
him.
calling him.
Oh, all
It's
right.
funnier if we call him.
We're on speaker.
Hello?
Hey Casey, it's Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Are
I have
you
to
at
set
the
a timer.
office?
I have to set a timer.
I am. I'm in the office.
He's like
Oh.
2 doors away.
I suppose you could come in, but we're not ready yet, Victoria. Stop it, jeez, my heart is racing.
What is going on?
Okay, you've never heard of Warrior Cats, right?
No.
Gotcha. All right, start the timer. Okay, so Warrior Cats is about a house cat named Rusty who wants to go out and experience the wider world. So he goes and he finds this clan of cats in the wilderness called Thunder Clan, led by Blue Star, their fearless leader, with her deputy Redtail. They take in Rusty, who is renamed Firepaw, who meets Greypaw, his best friend, as well as other apprentices. But Redtail is murdered mysteriously. Firepaw learns the ways of the warrior, all the different clans, Shadow Clan, Wind Clan, River Clan, the tensions they have between them. They're warriors. They fight all the time. But Tiger Claw is making machinations. He's making moves to rise in the ranks. And Blue Star is wise to this, and so is Firepaw. But then all their kits are getting stolen because Shadow Clan has undergone a major regime change and is now stealing kits and expanding its territory. So Firepaw is dispatched by Blue Star to lead a raid with White Storm and other Thunder Clan cats into Shadow Clan to depose the leader, which they do, rescue the cats. Also, there's this other cat named Yellowfang, who is a former medicine cat of Shadow Clan, who they embrace into their their clan because she's great.
Time's up.
Okay, that's all. That's all I got. So, do you like it? Would you read? Would you read Warrior Cats?
Do you like it?
There's something about a cat in the forest.
Something about a cat in a forest. Okay.
I don't know about this one.
The goal of this is not to get Casey to read Warrior Cats, by the way.
My goal is to get Casey to read Warrior Cats.
The goal of this is to get Casey to like Warrior Cats enough to where we can adapt it into an audio drama.
Oh, yes.
Well, it's been the fan dub.
But we can do it again.
I guess so. But that's all we got for now. I'll let you go. And I suppose the three of us can eventually get back to work, boss.
You get back to work right meow.
Okay, and on that, I'm hanging up.
What did he say?
He said, get back to work right meow.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing.
Well, go read Warrior Cats if you either have never read it or if you listen to this podcast and you're like, I really want to reread Warrior Cats. It's a great time. Can confirm, even as 20-year-olds, that we still enjoy Warrior Cats.
That's very generous with the phrase 20-year-olds.
Shh.
Support your local bookstore.
Yeah, support your local
and
bookstore.
don't let your cats outside.
Go to your
Don't
library.
let them outside. Indoor cats
Go
only.
to the library.
If you let them out, this is what will happen. They'll die. Brutal death at the hands of a vicious upstart.
Of a geopolitical rival or a... Well...
They'll join society, and as a member of society, I would never do that to someone.
How dare we subject our cats to society? Anyways, have a good week, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Good night. Sleep tight. Thank you for listening to Nostalgia Club. If you enjoyed the episode, follow us on Twitter @_Nostalgia Club and on Instagram @Nostalgia Club Podcast. Leave a comment, give us a rating, and subscribe. You can also send us an email with your suggestions for what we should review next at nostalgiaclubpodcast@gmail.com.